Well, here we are, folks. Welcome to the Caught by Happy podcast in the midst of a very, very trying time for all of us. Not some of us, all of us, in different ways for everyone, and for some, more serious ways. Today, as I say these words, it is Thursday, March 19th. I feel the need to give that exact date because depending on when you are listening to this episode, things will have probably changed, hopefully for the better. But we're going to see about that. I certainly hope so. Let me give you a quick update on the state of the Harrington household. We're here together. We're all relatively healthy. We are doing our part to stay away and stay home. I've gone out a couple of times on grocery runs, usually just to pick up groceries so I don't have to go into the store. But I've seen many older people, seniors, out in the parking lots going in and out of stores, and that makes me so nervous. And that's the reason that I'm choosing to try my best not to go into any public place, like a grocery store, if I don't have to. Because what seems like a little sore throat to me might not be for them, and I certainly wouldn't want to put anyone in danger. So we're doing our part the best we can, and it's tough. You might remember I mentioned a few episodes back about my father-in-law who's in the hospital fighting his second battle with leukemia. Well, obviously no one's allowed to go visit him, especially us who have been around kids and we were just socializing with no distance less than a week ago. So it's difficult for my wife who just wants to go be with her dad, you know. But this is what's required of us at this time. And if we all do our part, all of us, we can hopefully get back to normal sooner rather than later. And I want to say something to those of you who are choosing not to distance yourself from others. Obviously, I'm not a scientist or a medical professional or a mathematician. If I were, I probably would not be doing this right now. But please, you need to listen to those people and listen to their words carefully and follow their suggestions and recommendations. Do not be selfish. We are all in this fight together, and we'll only win if we all do our part. Do not be selfish. Your spring break can wait. Your drinks with friends can wait. A minor cough for you could mean death for someone else. It's that simple, and our medical facilities can't handle it. Stay home. If you have a family, try your best to fill the time together with joy, happiness, maybe some puzzles, other activities. If you're single, download some books. If you have a library card, many libraries offer digital versions. Binge watch The Office again. We all got to do it. Social distance with Dunder Mifflin. Start a new hobby. Shit, start a podcast. Who cares if it sucks? Human beings by nature are social creatures. It's in our DNA. We are programmed to crave some sort of socialization and seek out personal connections, introvert or extrovert. To an extent, what makes us human is our need to connect with others. So everything that we're being told to do right now goes against our very nature and our instincts. It's weird to think that suppressing the very thing that makes us human will be the thing that could preserve our humanity. There's going to be a lot of struggling people and a lot of struggling families over the next few weeks, a lot of restaurant workers, hairdressers, nail salons, whatever, service providers. If you're one of those people who provide a service your clients are no longer able to receive, hang in there. Remember, there are millions of other people in the same boat as you. My hope is those of you who are lucky enough to continue to receive a paycheck during this time, find a way to somehow lend some support to those who will be in desperate need, whether that be buying gift cards for future use, or maybe it's ordering a bag of groceries to be dropped off for your neighbor. And yes, the government should absolutely step in and provide assistance. But these small acts of kindness that we can offer from afar will go a long way in preserving our humanity when this thing is all over. Okay? All right, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about my guest today. Today, Matt Paxton is talking to us. If you've ever watched Hoarders, you've probably seen Matt Paxton digging through a pile of old newspapers and dead cats. Well, Matt has a new show on PBS. It's called Legacy List. And let me tell you, this show is 100% up my alley. First of all, I love digging through old family junk or heirlooms or whatever and finding something that was just used by or meant something to one of my ancestors. Holding something in my hands that my great-grandfather also held is a special feeling to me. So when I came across this show last month and I knew Matt lives here in Richmond, Virginia, I knew I had to reach out to him and see if he wanted to chat. And yes, it was that easy. I just sent him an email. Obviously, we're going to plan on doing this thing in person since we're both in the same town, but, well, here we are. I talked to Matt from the cozy comfort of my wife's closet, where I could get a tiny bit more quiet while my kids tried day 4 of homeschooling downstairs where I normally record. Hey, this is the new normal, people. Anyways, we're going to talk to Matt. We're going to get into it with him right now and see how he's holding up. Hear about how he went from scooping cat mummies out of living rooms to helping people find the treasured items that tell the story of their family history. So here's my chat with Matt Paxton.
And we finished it this weekend, and it's just like kind of get all the contractors ready. And so I was sitting in Richmond, and I was just like, I can't. I know I got to stay home, but I can't like watch this house not get built the last weekend.
Oh, so she's moving to Georgia, or she's in Georgia?
She lives here, and
Yeah.
she's a minimalist, and she's built a home for minimalism. So
Really?
the move will only take about 20 minutes because she ain't got stuff, but the building the house, she's been building the house for 5 months.
Yeah,
So
that's funny. A minimalist. My sister's. I would call her a minimalist too.
yeah,
I told her I was talking to you, and she freaked out. She's like, every time I watched Hoarders, I would throw something out of my
that's
house.
what everybody tells me. Yeah,
And now you go to her house, and she's got like a couch and
mhm.
a lamp.
Oh yeah. Oh, I mean, look at this place. This place is minimalist, man. There's nothing in here.
Yeah. Otherwise, how you holding up, man? This is
I'm
crazy
good,
times.
man. It is. It's the nature of my business. I'm used to stuff being difficult.
Yeah.
Like every job I walk into, it's the worst day of their life, and so I think I've been training for 15 years for crazy stuff, and
Uh,
it's hit. I mean, it's insane. Like what's going on? I mean,
Yeah.
the I got the kids home, so the kids, learning to be a teacher all of a sudden, and
How old are your kids?
6, 8, and 10,
Okay.
and I work in entertainment, so I make my money on a stage, whether it
Right.
be TV or radio or on a literally stage. But my entire career just got punted 6 months at best.
Right.
So it's kind of like, oh, all right, I got to figure out how to make a living now too,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
part of life. I mean, we're all there.
Yeah.
You
We're
know,
all dealing with that. Exactly.
The good news is it's not just you're not sitting by yourself. I mean, you are sitting by yourself, but you're not like we're all gonna have to kind of redo things. I mean, to figure out what we're gonna do. So,
Yeah. I mean, I my hope is that at the end of all of this, we'll all have more strong bonds and connections with our immediate families.
oh, what an opportunity if you flip your mindset and say, okay,
Yeah.
like I mean, I'm my 6 year old who has just been a nasty tear of a person the last 6 months since school started because he's having to get up at 6 o'clock,
Yeah.
and we've been letting him sleep in to like 9 every day. And he's a joy right now. Like it's a new kid. And I'm like, man, what an opportunity to get to know my 6 year old, and like hang out with them, and we're going back and watching movies that, we watched Gremlins the other night,
Oh,
you know,
man.
with my
That's a good
boys.
one. That's a good
It's a
one to watch
great
with kids.
movie,
Yeah.
and the boys are like, what is this? They didn't even heard anything about it. So we're tearing through old movies. I'm just hanging out with
Yeah.
my boys, just trying to get them to like I think it's a mindset. Like I mean, I'm not saying we're all broke, we're all going to have financial problems, but like you could look at this as a disaster to be like stuck with your kids, or you could look at it as like a good opportunity to have like 6 to 8 weeks with your kids.
Right. Right.
And I'm just trying to look at the positive.
Can I ask you, you said you said 6, 8, and what was the other one?
10,
6, 8, and
6, 8, 10.
10.
Yeah.
I've got 8, 7, and 2. How are you talking to them about this?
Very open about it. I'm like, look, guys, this is a big deal in the world, and people are gonna, it's gonna change everything. And
Yeah.
their dad's job is so different. I mean, they know that I'll be home 8 months out of the year, and then I take off and do TV shows for 3 or 4 months. So they're used to me coming and going. But I just said, look, I said, like where I've been pushing it is like on food. They're very wasteful with stuff. I mean, they've always, you don't get into hoarding cleanup because you're rich, right? You get into because there's nothing else in your. No, I couldn't get another job, so I started cleaning up old ladies' houses. And so I grew up very poor. I grew up with no money, and so I'm very mindful of food and waste. They came along when life was good financially for me, and so they're not used to not having. And so I've really tried to put, I've turned into that guy. I'm like, hey, there's kids in China that don't have dinner, and I'm like trying to put them like, look, guys, like we're not going to do as bigger portions. We gotta, the stores might close.
Yeah.
And they started asking about death pretty quickly. They're like, are people going to die? And I'm like, well, maybe. I don't tell them numbers. I don't say a million people are going to die,
Yeah.
but I'm pretty open about it as much as I can. But I try to always end up with the positive, which is, hey, we get to hang out together, guys. Like this is pretty cool.
Yeah. You keeping them away from the news and everything like that?
Yeah, they don't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
no, they
made the
don't watch the
mistake
news.
yesterday of leaving the room with the news on,
Oh
and I came
no.
back, and later that night, my 6-year-old wanted to know what happens when she dies. So it was
Yeah.
just like,
Well, so my kids did ask, who are you? My 10-year-old is stuck on, who am I going to live with if you die?
yeah, God, it's
Because their
tough.
mom and I, we got divorced last year,
Hmm.
and they live with me most of the time. And so they're like, they're just curious. They're not like trying to be this, they're not like this massive depressed kid. They're just like, logistically, how does this work? And you're like, well, and then we start talking about it. I'm like, well, maybe you'll live with grandma. And they're like, well, grandma's really old. What if grandma dies? And it's like, oh, she's 70, by the way. She's not that old. But it's like, man, I mean, they do ask questions, and I try to be as honest as possible without, like, opening up a ditch.
Right,
Like,
sure.
I try to stay away from death. I try to stay away from, well, hey, what we could do is, Daddy, how about we just get Daddy healthy? If you're with kids your age, I mean, mine need a schedule, man. So I went out and got a
Yeah,
whiteboard, and I got a big whiteboard, and we wrote the schedules down all the way down to who gets to pick the movie at night. And I'm like, so now we didn't jump right into the schoolwork because we just kind of wanted to enjoy a couple days. But now they've got their schoolwork allotted in the morning. We've got playtime. We're going to the park. I mean, we're assuming we're going to get quarantined fully next week,
sure.
and but we're just trying to give structure to everything and just let them know when we're doing it. But I think the unknown is what's scarier for them than the known. I mean, they
Yeah.
just like, well, who's going to be here tonight? Am I going to be at mommy's or daddy's? So like we had to like put a schedule. Okay, these 3 days you'll be at mommy's. These three
Yeah.
days you'll be at daddy's.
Well, the
And
structure is reassuring for kids for sure.
yeah,
Like, they don't have to worry about what's coming next because they see right, they know what they're
yeah.
doing.
And I'm kind of feeling lucky that I get to like I was starting to get into the whole like, oh my god, what am I going to do for work? And like I've been fine. I've figured it out for 20 years. Why wouldn't I figure it out now?
Yeah, yeah,
And so I'm just trying to like at 5 o'clock, I'm trying to turn it all off and really hang out with the kids. And so like we are shooting basketball a lot. We're
yeah.
going for walks a lot. We're going for hikes a lot. And I just keep going back to the mindset. Like if they see me freaking out, it isn't going to be good.
Right. That's right.
Them they're sleeping. They're doing sleepovers every night in each other's rooms, which is fine.
Yeah.
I don't know if medically that's okay, but I'm just like whatever. Let them.
Well, I mean, if they're already in the same house, it's
We're
like,
already in the same house,
right,
and we
right.
we got pink eye. The
Did you really?
last week, our whole
No
house got
kidding.
pink
So
eye.
did we.
Oh, we all got it bad, man.
Yeah, so did we. It was
Oh,
probably 2 weeks ago.
yeah. So it must be going around the schools because
Yeah.
I got it really bad, and then my oldest son got it really bad, and then their mother got it really bad. And so I was like, man, I was like already like into contagion or outbreak because I was just so
Yes.
focused on getting rid of the pink eye. I was more worried about that than than coronavirus.
And did they also have, like, a month ago, like, a little stomach bug that lasted a day or
Yep.
2? Wow,
Mm,
yeah, so did my
yeah.
kids.
Being in hoarding clean out, I mean, I get a stomach bug. I lose
Yeah.
7 pounds twice a year, right? Like I'll get
Do
a
you really?
24-hour. Oh yeah, I'll get a 24-hour virus. I'll lose like 5 to 7 pounds that day, and I'll get it again in the fall. And it's like I need it one more time, during the year. Like I'd love to lose. I go up 20 pounds every year. I go up 10 to 20.
That's me. Well, I do the same thing, but it's
Yeah,
purposeful. September,
yeah.
I start eating everything I possibly can, and then February, I'm like,
You
"Well, I'm
hibernate.
probably
Yeah,
gonna go to the beach sometime this summer."
yeah. I better start again. Yeah, exactly,
Alright,
exactly.
so, I mean, we can talk about the current
Yeah.
situation forever, but let's just talk about your history and how you got into doing what you do, and before we even go back, I wanna talk about what you're doing right now, and to just tell you that about a month ago, I came across the show Legacy List.
Okay.
My parents were actually in town,
And
and
you
we were
live in Richmond, right?
I live in Richmond, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my parents live up in Western New York,
Okay.
but they came down and we were just kinda sitting around after the kids went to bed and flipping through the channels, and we found it. My parents were just like, "Oh, it's that guy from Hoarders." And I was like, "I think he's in Richmond. I'm gonna send him an email and just, see what he wants to do." And I watched that show,
Yeah.
and then after I got in contact with you, I just watched episodes 1 through 4 on,
Yeah.
PBS On Demand.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this show, I'm telling you, is like 100% my thing, 100% up my alley. I am that guy, like, who really likes going through family treasures and, like, finding
Yeah.
things that my
It's the
great-grandfather held.
stories. Yeah, it's the
Yeah,
stories, man. The
and
stuff
I'm
in the
like
stories.
and I don't wanna, like, compare, like,
Yeah.
competitive shows or anything like that, but I'm a big American Pickers guy too.
Yeah.
Like, my wife gets annoyed because I'll watch a marathon one night, like, all night long of
It's a
American
very
Pickers.
so we'll get into the math of this too. That's a very watchable show, right? Like
Mhm.
it's hard to turn off pickers. And Hoarders is not either you love it or hate it,
Yeah.
right? And I was like, with the political environment and the war. I mean, I started the show 2 years ago trying to create it, and I was like, we're going to need something positive. Like, I'm just so overwhelmed with negative, and this was 2 years ago. I was like, I really want positive, and I love the families that I help.
Yeah.
And so I just kept trying to push, like, let's do positive. And like one of the formulas I kept going back to was, man, American Pickers is just a positive show, and it's
Yeah.
interesting. Now, all those guys could be on Hoarders. In fact,
The guys on pickers that
we
they
have, yeah, we have the record for the most people that have appeared both on American Pickers and Hoarders. We have 10 people that have been on both shows.
Oh, really? I didn't realize
Yeah,
there was
and
overlap.
yeah, no one else has crossovers like that, in reality. And they've had 10 that have been on both. I mean, I love Pickers. It's simple, and I
Yeah.
always loved Antique Roadshow, and
Yeah, me too.
I liked the simplicity of it. I liked the encouragement, and then believe it or not, I was in Canada and I was watching Canadian Pickers, which is a format. So it's the same thing as American Pickers except in Canada.
A lot more, hidden hockey pucks and stuff that
Yeah, I mean the content's actually still the same. It's more frontiersman stuff,
Yeah, yeah.
but like the show is funny because you get American Pickers, the format's very similar, and they get to the point. Okay, well, thanks for showing me your house. How much do you want to sell? And they start to haggle on the American one. And on the Canadian Pickers, there's like four families they're helping, and they roll in. They're like, "Man, I really like your stuff. Thanks for that tour. Do you want to sell any of it?" And the guy goes, "No." And he goes, and the guy goes, "Okay, thanks for showing me your stuff." And he leaves the house. So no, like American haggling. Like it's a show and tell. Like the guy shows the stuff, and then every time they go through that dance, "Do you want to sell it?" He goes, "No." He goes,
Oh,
"Okay,
man.
well, thanks for showing you. Have a nice day, eh?" And they walk off. And I was like, "What a great show!" When you don't get into the drama and the
Right.
BS of American reality TV.
Yeah.
And so that show made me want the Canadian Pickers made me want to start actually doing my show. I was like, well, what would I do if
Yeah.
I could make my perfect show? And it all does connect. I'll tell you, it all connects back from 20 years ago when I started. When I was 24, I lost my dad, my stepdad, and both my grandfathers
Oh my gosh.
within about 18 months. My mom says it was 2 years. I thought it was a year in my mind, but she says it was two. I lost all the men that raised me, and I had to clean their houses. I just started cleaning up the houses, and I had been an economist for the Federal Reserve previously, and I was an economist for Caesar's
At
Palace Casinos.
at
At
24?
24, yeah. I
Wow.
went to Mary Washington College up in Fredericksburg, just north of Richmond, and knew I wanted to be an economist. Got a job at the Federal Reserve right out of college. I was like the lowest guy on the totem pole. Didn't know, what I wanted to do other than work at banks. And so I took that job, and I knew on the first day I'd made a mistake. It was downtown Federal Reserve, 24th floor. I got yelled at for being 3 minutes late. 20 years later, I'm still getting yelled at for being 3 minutes late. But I own the company now, so I'm not so upset about it.
Yeah.
But like I was like, this isn't for me. I had to wear a suit and had a briefcase, and I was just like, I don't think I can do this.
Yeah.
And my mom made me stay 6 months. She said, you have to stay. And you gave it your word, you're gonna give it 6 months. And I knew for the entire 6 months I didn't want to stay. And so on my 6 month review, they told me everything I did wrong. And I go, did I do anything right? I remember asking the lady that. And she goes, well, we don't go over that. This is in 1999, right? And she goes, we don't really go over that. And I was like, okay, well, I don't want to be here. I'm out. I quit. And she's like, seriously? I go, yeah, I just don't want to do that. And so I left, and she was just like, you're at the Federal Reserve. It's the best job in the world. And I was
Right,
like,
right.
not for me. And it was right at the beginning of the dot-com boom, the first boom.
Sure.
And so I went out west and ended up in Tahoe. I was in Vegas for like 2 weeks. And I was like, well, I don't have the maturity to stay in this town. And so I moved to Tahoe thinking it would be easier.
Yeah.
And I always say it's like moving to Chicago to lose weight. It's like the wrong town for that
Sure.
goal, and I just I mean, it was a debaucherous summer and fall, and then left. And then when I came home, my dad and my stepdad, everybody started dying. And so I just didn't have a job. And I was like, I'll start cleaning these houses. And I started cleaning them, and I loved them. And
Me
I really loved the stories. I loved the items you'd find. I found things my dad knew he was going to die. So I had found things that he had like hidden throughout the house,
Yeah.
like little Easter eggs that were really cool.
Oh.
And I found notes from my grandfather to my grandmother,
Mhm.
like this is the heating element for the stove, and this is the he left her notes everywhere so
Yeah.
that she could find. And they were married since they were 15, 16, so they'd only known each. They were married 68 years, I think.
And he was doing that to help her out for when
Help her.
he
So
left?
yeah, he had he got what did he have? He had diabetes. He knew he was dying pretty quickly from it. So he went around the house and just wrote all this directions for her so that she could stay. They were like homesteaders out in the middle of nowhere. They built their house. They would literally went into the woods and cut down the trees to build their house. They
Mm,
put all the stuff to build their house. They pulled it out of the woods. I mean, they're just incredible homesteaders, and just they would sit down and I mean, their whole life was about gardening, so that they could eat for the winter. They
sure.
would save up for the garden and hunt, and everything was about having enough food to get through the winter. They lived right way up in the mountains, up in Colorado, Wyoming, and cleaning the house, finding all the notes my grandfather had saved, and then I found all the letters from his parents to each other, and it was just awesome. And I was 24, grieving these people, but like falling in love with them all over again. I mean, I was
Right.
really lucky to be raised by these people and hear all their stories. And then
It's weird to think about those things, like those personal touches, those notes. I
yeah,
don't feel like we as a
no.
society do that with our families. We're not really passing down those handwritten or handmade.
Well, so let's go back to the virus. I think that's one. I mean, like, I look at this as an opportunity, right? Like,
Yeah.
we're gonna slow down now. And like, my grandpa didn't have an email address. He didn't, he didn't even watch TV. I mean, till the very end, they would watch the Broncos on Sunday afternoon, but like, they didn't. They had three channels, and like, their life was different. They made different choices, and I do
Mm.
hope that this us being home for. I think it's going to be through the fall. I don't think the kids are going back to school this year,
No, no.
and I think it's going to force us to either freak out or just slow down and like enjoy the world again. And I think we do go back to writing letters. We will go back. I mean, not 100 years back. I
Mhm.
mean, I'm not going to learn calligraphy to write my child a note, but like, I do think I'm getting a relationship with my son that I would not have if this virus had not happened. I mean, I'm going to get a moment in time. I mean, our generation, I say this all the time, all the houses I've cleaned out over the last 20 years, whether it be hoarding or downsizing, it comes back to, I find the newspaper when JFK was
Yeah,
assassinated. I find the newspaper when somebody walked on the moon. I find, the last kids of the Depression, so they have a lot of food that's been saved up. I mean, there's very moments in time.
yeah.
For our generation, it's just been 9/11.
Sure.
And even then, we've kind of, moved back from that. It's almost been 20 years from that. And so, the kids below, I'm 44, the kids below us have never known any type of hardship, and they've never known any type of service. I always go back to the word service. All the houses I cleaned, people gave everything away. They'll talk about giving up the buttons on their pants for the war effort.
Yeah.
I ask a 15-year-old kid, they're not going to cut the button off their $200 jeans to help somebody.
Right,
But
right.
I do believe we're at the first or second week of a whole different life, and so I'm lucky that I weekly get a kind of a snapshot into all the service that all these generations have done.
Yeah.
I guess that's one reason I'm not so worried about it, because I see every day, I see families that have gotten through it, and they've made it.
Right, and I mean, it's at the family level because we know the
Yeah.
stories of World War II, we know the stories
Yeah.
of Pearl Harbor, we know the stories of 9/11, but, you get to see, like, the actual individual stories of how they got
Yeah.
through it.
I mean, I was interviewing a lady this week, trying to get her to do a podcast with me, and she's a nurse right now at MCV. She's in MCV. She may or may not have the virus.
Mm,
She hasn't had a test yet, but this is crazy. She was a nurse during World War II,
mm,
and now she's getting waited on by the nurses at MCV, who I all know, and she's telling them stories about like what she had to do to be a nurse during World War II.
yeah,
And it's like the sacrifice they gave and the service it's really amazing. And so I always remind, and there's a meme going around this week, which is like, our grandparents were asked to, go to war for 3 years,
you're
and
asking to sit on your butt.
we're being asked to watch shit on Netflix, right? Like, it's
Right,
okay, like, we can handle this,
right.
you know
I certainly would've if somebody would've told me a month ago that we'd be doing this, I would have been a little bit more like, "I don't know if we as a human race have the capability anymore to get through it," but we've come through bad shit before.
Oh yeah. I mean, I heard someone say it this morning. I was listening to something, and just, we're talking. Being an economist prior to this, I do look at the economy side of this, and it's disastrous what's going to happen with unemployment.
Sure.
But things are different. I mean, we have the internet, which allows us to. I mean, I always say, think 20 years ago, no apps existed, right?
Yep.
Apps did not, and now I think how many millionaires there are because of apps, right? Here, you and I are. We met, and now we are. We're doing a podcast online. Like, the tools that exist will allow us to survive. We
Right.
will find a way to do it. It'll take a little harder to do, but I mean, I just
Maybe it'll be a convergence of technology expanding to, meet the needs of socialization that we have to
yeah,
have and connection, but also, like we talked about before, the actual personal touches
Yeah,
and
the love and
connection.
compassion will
Yeah.
come. I mean, this is going to force that to come back in the equation. We have been an economy of wants, not need, and I think our needs will change over the next 8 weeks. I don't think we're going to go back to working in a big company. I mean, I think we're going to learn that we can work at home, and we're going to be around our kids, and we're not going to want to go back to a big office downtown. I think people are going to say, "Well, I want more in life. I want to be now that I know I can be with my kids. I want to be with my kids more."
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
that I've noticed the first couple days, all those memes were about, oh, ho, ho, they were all about drinking wine and getting drunk and getting through the week. And now, within a week later, people are just like, man, I'm really enjoying this time with my kids. If you just watch social media, you're seeing the comments become more positive and more
Yeah.
like, okay, I can do that. We can do this.
It's gonna get tough though when the summer hits.
Oh, God.
Going to the pool and just being
No.
out.
Well, be no pool. Pools won't open.
Right. Right.
I grew up really poor, and we figured it out. I mean, we
Sure.
always did. I mean, we had a blast. I mean, we used to turn our big wheels upside down. We were making an ice cream machine. You know, I used to sell candy in the streets. I mean, like we always find a way to have fun.
Right.
Lemonade stands. What I mean, I think pure quarantine lockdown is going to be tough,
Yeah.
but we'll get through it.
Hopefully a creative explosion, from kids, from adults, everything.
Oh, I know. Oh, my kids and I mean, we're planning out like, okay, they really want to make a video, an
Yeah.
online video, and so we're writing a song and we're going to perform a song,
That's
and
awesome.
that's what we're going to do. That's their project. I was like, okay, we'll do it. You know.
All right, let's go back again
All right.
because we can continue to just
Yeah.
circling back. I'm sure we're gonna circle back to this virus
Yeah.
thing again. So you were cleaning out your stepdad's and your grandfather's
Yeah.
houses. How did you turn that into something that you
Well, it was really simple. Yeah, my grandpa always said to me, if something sucks, do it as a job. He said because people will pay you to do it.
wow, that's great advice.
Yeah, I mean, it's really simple. He said, if something sucks, nobody else wants to do it. So do it as a job. And so it is a very, I mean, in my 20s, I knew as an entrepreneur, okay, I just got to focus on doing the work no one else wants to do. I say that to everybody. I grew up in Richmond in the 70s and 80s when the suburbs were being built. So like Midlothian, Robius, Tarrington, none of those places existed.
Uh-huh.
I grew up in Stony Point, so I would near the river. So just watch the suburbs being built. And the trash man lived in my neighborhood. He had the nicest house in my neighborhood because he would pick up the trash in all the other neighborhoods. And so he was 10 years ahead of us. And so people would make fun of the trash. He's a trash man. I'm like, dude, he's the richest guy I know, right?
Right.
Like he's got a BMW in the '80s, right? Like that guy was a baller. And I just watched him hustle. He was a hard worker, and he always stayed in his trucks. And I just really respected that as well. And so when it came down to like, I knew I didn't want to work in a real job. When I really enjoyed cleaning out these houses, the four estates I had to clean out. And so I just said, all right, I'm gonna do it as a job. And I had $300 to my name. I went to Kinko's, which is now FedEx. Went to Kinko's and I made flyers for $300. I've made them as much money as I could, and I just walked around the town putting in the flyers in mailboxes, and I got one job, and so I did it, and I was like, he's like, how much is this going to cost? And I was like, $800. Like I didn't know, I just guessed it.
What are you
Yeah.
gonna pay me
Now,
that?
yeah, now, yeah, you willing to pay me that? I was like $800. Waiting for him to be like yes or no. And of course, that'd be like a $10,000 job now. The
Oh,
job was
really?
massive. Oh my god, it was huge. But $800 was $1 million to me back then.
So was the angle back then, was it people who had passed on and cleaning out the estate?
Yeah, I wanted to do estate. It's funny. I wanted to do what I do now with on the show Legacy List. I wanted to clean out houses when people were downsizing, or I wanted to clean out hoarded homes. I like the hoarded homes. We didn't know what hoarded homes were. I just knew nobody else wanted to do them, so I didn't have any competition.
Mm,
And they were just called pack rats back then. And I went to a lady named Katie Hammond who had a company called Door to Door Solutions here in town, and she was a move manager. She would move old ladies into senior living communities. And I went to all the assisted living communities and I said, "Hey, I'd love to do a job for you." And they all said, "We're good. We don't need anybody." And I was like, "No, I'll do one for free." And they were like, "Nope, we're good. We got a lady. Her name's Katie." So I went and met Katie and I said, "No one will hire me because they all want to hire you." I said, "What do you not do?" And she goes, "I don't do the hoarding jobs. I don't do the really messy cleanups."
mm.
And I was like, "Oh, I do. I'm really good at it." She's like, "You are?" I go, "Totally." This was like 15 years ago. And she's like, "Well, I've got one if you want to do it." I was like, "I'd love to do it." She's like, "Come by the house Monday." So I went that weekend to the Bon Air Library and I checked out a book on hoarding. And I had never cleaned out a hoarded house before. I didn't know any of the terms or anything. And I checked out this book from a guy named Dr. Tompkins, Michael Tompkins. And the irony is, I've cleaned out probably 20 houses with Dr. Tompkins now on the TV show Hoarders. He and I became really good friends.
Oh, wow.
But 15 years ago, I read his book, didn't know anything about it. And then
Yeah,
that
yeah.
Monday, I showed up and I started cleaning the hoarded house, and I just figured it out over the next couple years. And I just every day I would like, okay, well, this is good. And I'd make enough money to eat. I was 22. I had no kids. I had no wife. I was single. My rent was $300. I
Did
mean,
you have a team with you, or was it just you?
I've always hired guys that were right out of prison. At the time, it was just I had friends that were coming out of prison at that point in my life, so it was easy to get them, and I knew they needed work. But what
Mhm.
later I found out in hoarding, it was really important to have guys that had done significant time because they understood the mental aspect of hoarding. They understood isolation. They understood perceived judgment. They could relate to a hoarder better than I could. I mean, I'm really lucky. I mean, I didn't have any money growing up, but I had a lot of family. I had a lot of love. I had a really, I mean, I had always joke my parents were divorced, but that gave me two sets of
Mhm.
families, right, that loved me. So I mean, we had an abundance of love and happiness, and so I was always told I had a whole line. All those men that I said died, they were all entrepreneurs. So all I knew was doing my own business. That's all I'd ever seen. And my dad couldn't keep a job to save his life. He was an entrepreneur and always had been. And my grandpas were too. I mean, they were farmers and entrepreneurs. So I knew I could do it, and so I just never. No one ever told me I couldn't. Like I never was told I couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
So I just assumed I could. So I was like, all right, well, this is just the next phase. Like it's the next step, stepping stones. And so every job was a stepping stone. I was like, hey, what's the next one? Next, the next one. What's the next one? And I finally started getting more significant crews. And before I knew it, I had 8 employees. And it was like, man, we're busy for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And then one of the kids who was a student at VCU, he was like, hey, there's this film student. He's like, there's this thing called YouTube. I'm gonna film you and put you on this thing called YouTube. And it was brand new. No one knew what it was. And I was like, okay, like whatever.
Film you cleaning
Cleaning. I was
houses.
like, "What are you going to film?" Well, I've noticed, and this was a turning point in my career. He goes, "You notice every house we do, the people cry, and then they give you a hug, and then they give you a check." And he goes, "I think that's special." And this was a young kid. He was probably 20,
Uh-huh.
19, 20. And I was like, "Man, you're right. That is special." And so he filmed us, and we talked about the mental part of hoarding. He put it on YouTube, and a couple weeks later, some people from A&E called me, and they were like, "Hey, you want to go on this TV show?"
Oh, wow.
Now that's 12 years ago.
Was the TV show already in development?
I actually watched the first episode on TV and I was like, "Hey, that's what I do." And then I didn't know anything about the show. They had only made 4 and they needed 2 more. And they were apparently like dying for content. They didn't have it. And they were afraid they weren't going to finish the 5th and 6th episode. And I met them on a Monday and by Friday I was in Alabama filming a TV show.
Wow.
So my life changed significantly over that week. My grandpa had always told me like, dude, if someone asks you to do something, just say yes and like figure out the
I
price
figured it out.
and how to do it later. He's like, if it's an opportunity, take it. And so they were like, hey, do you want to do a TV show? I'm like, sure.
Yep.
And I was like, how much do you pay me? And they were like, $300. And I'm like, it was for the whole week. And they were like, sure. Now, what I later found out is that was the day rate, and they didn't tell me. I mean, I became really good friends. If they would have paid me that a day, I didn't know. 300 bucks was $1 million to me at that point. It's still a
Yeah.
lot of. If you gave me 300 bucks today, I'd be very thankful.
So
Right?
you were
It's still
still
a lot.
getting paid for the job, but this was additional
Yep,
for being on the show.
additional fee on the show. They were going to pay for my food and a plane ticket there and back. And so I was
Yeah.
like, oh my god, I get to go to Alabama. I get to eat for free. I get a hotel room for free, and I come home with 300 bucks. I was like, done. I'm in. But I was filming Entrepreneur. I had no money. I mean, like, this is a funny story. I ended up being on the show, the first 2 episodes, and no one thought it would go to season 2. I was trying to get an article in the Richmond newspaper about it. That's why I agreed to do it. Because I wanted an article in a
So you could get
newspaper.
more business in Richmond.
I get more business in Richmond.
Sure.
Stepping stones, right? It's all
Yeah.
stepping stones. And this back, I mean, that's how long ago it was the newspaper mattered. Richmond Biz Sense didn't even exist yet. And so I actually didn't have enough money in my checking account to get to the airport. I had to borrow $50 from one of the camera guys. And then when the first show aired, I tell the story. I love the story. My cell phone had been cut off
Mhm.
because I hadn't paid the bill. And it was back when you'd call and go, doo doo doo, this number has been temporarily disconnected. My friends were used to that. I didn't have any money, and so they would just wait a couple days and call back. Hoarders was going to air that day. It was a Tuesday, and I called them and I was like, guys, I don't have enough money to pay the bills. I'm going to be on this TV show tonight, and they're like, sure or whatever. And I'm like, no, no, look it up, like look it up now. And the guy's like, dude, I don't have time for this. And I was like, look, man, this is the best salesmanship I've ever done in my entire life. I go, dude, and I'm a good salesman, right? I go, dude, do you have a mom? And he goes, what do you mean? I go, do you have a mom? And he goes, I do. And I go, I've given my mom nothing to be proud of in the last 10 years. And I finally have something today. I go, I'm going to be on TV and my mom's going to be so proud of me. I've helped someone on TV. I go, she's going to call me and tell me that she loves me and she's proud of me. And I go, and she's going to call me and she's going to hear, doo, 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 this number has been temporarily disconnected. And it's dead silence on the other line, right? He waits and he goes, I got a mom, dude. I hear you. He goes, I'll turn your phone on for 2 days. He goes, you can't call out, but you can receive calls in.
Oh man.
I was like, I'll take it. And that night, Hoarders aired, and my phone has literally not stopped ringing since. That's 10 years ago,
What a
11 years
great
ago.
story, man.
Yeah. And I hate Verizon, but I got to tell you, that kid totally hooked me up, man.
Was
Totally.
that was like '08-ish?
That was, oh, yeah. So it was 11 years ago. So yeah, oh eight, oh
Wow.
nine. I weighed 130 pounds.
Mm.
Now I weigh 200. I have three kids now. I had no kids when that show started. And it's crazy. I mean, I've done 100 some episodes,
You did
and
100 and some
yeah,
episodes of
yeah, I did
Hoarders?
like 103 episodes of Hoarders. It changed my life.
Are they
It
still
was
making that show?
still making it. I mean, after this week, who knows what's going to happen with any shows? But
Yeah, yeah.
I did season 11 last year, and that's probably it for me now that I'm working with PBS.
Oh, wow.
But it was a great run. Positive. I mean, I traveled the world with these people. We had a film crew of about 12 guys that we traveled around the country together for 10 years, and we got to know each other really well. And it was great. I mean, it was an amazing, and we got to help people every week.
Yeah.
As gross as that show is, we really, really got to help people, and it gave me a really big business.
I wanted to ask you about the helping people part of it because you started your business as a entrepreneur to just make some
Yeah,
money and do the job that nobody wanted to do.
yeah. But I knew I was making a difference every day.
How did you start to build or develop that compassion for those people who needed your help?
Oh man, I grew up with it. Grew up at a church here in Richmond called Grace Baptist Church. I mean, my grandpa would take me to nursing homes after church, and we'd have to meet all the old ladies, all the shut-ins, and I had little old ladies in my neighborhood that I would walk around and go in and visit, and they'd give me candy. I mean, I worked at a pharmacy in high school, Buford Road Pharmacy,
Mm,
and the old guy Al Krickenberger there, he used to tell me to, yeah, Mr. Krickenberger, he used to give me he'd just say I would deliver prescriptions to these old ladies because CVS was coming in, and he's like, I'm going to lose my business. You just go and deliver the pills to them, and if they want you to come in and visit, you go in and visit and talk. He goes, I
mm.
don't care what time you get back, you're on the clock. I think I made like $4 an hour or $3 an hour, but it was a
Wow.
ton of money
Yeah.
back then, and it was great. I'd get like $2 or $3 in tips, so I would make enough money to make my dinner every night. And I just got to know these old ladies, and I love their stories. I just love visiting and hearing. So I guess I grew up with with two sets of really awesome grandparents. And so I mean, from a very early age, I had a compassion, and I was rewarded for helping, whether it be candy or money or emotional. I was always rewarded for helping, and so I just knew very early, like, okay, I got to help people. So it's funny. I've had businesses where I'm just selling widgets. I mean, I've been an entrepreneur for 20 years,
Mhm.
had six businesses. My only businesses that were successful were when they helped people. If I was just selling an item, it didn't matter. I needed to know I was making a difference. And so for me, I won't start a business now unless I know I'm making a difference.
Yeah. Is that a personality thing you think? You're just not a good salesman of selling something,
Yeah,
you're
if
more
I
of just
don't know I got to believe I'm changing the world, man. I don't want to, I mean, if I make one person happy, that's great. But like, I got to believe personally that I'm changing the world. If I don't believe that, that's not going to keep my attention.
yeah.
I'll be on to the next topic pretty quickly. And that's just who I am. Always have been. Just took me 20 years to get comfortable with that.
How many people throughout the whole run of Hoarders that you've been involved with, how many people do you feel like really truly were helped?
Okay, I know the question here. So let's start off with, we put people with a mental disorder on television for entertainment.
Mm.
That's what we did. All right. And that is an equation for disaster.
Do you feel bad about that? Is that I mean, do you feel like
Yeah, I
there's
think about I go back and forth it every day. I got paid to put people with a mental disorder on television. That's challenging. I mean, I will say this: we gave them a year of therapy on the back end.
Mhm.
If they did the show, they got up to a year of therapy, and we paid the therapist directly. If we had not done that, I think it would have been unethical
Mm.
because I've seen a lot of families change their minds. What we didn't know was we brought the awareness to the hoarding disorder at an enormous rate. Like so many people were found. I mean, I still get I get emails every day, like, "Oh my god, I watched. I never seen your show before. I just watched it, and man, I learned how to talk to my mom now, and I learned how to tell her that I love her, but I also learned how to tell her that I needed to." We got to clean the house up. And so, what I didn't know was I was teaching people how to communicate with their parents and understand their parents. And so that made it worthwhile. Like sometimes, I made a joke about Donald Trump one time on TV. and that was a disaster. Whether which side you're on, I don't care.
Mm.
I thought it was a funny joke, right? And you can YouTube it, you'll find it. Trump joke, hoarders, you'll see it, right?
Okay.
And I'll let that joke stand for what it is. I thought it was funny. I still think it's funny, but a lot of people didn't. And we had to move. I had to change my address. I mean, it got really bad.
Wow.
Oh yeah, it was bad, man, really bad.
What year was
And
this? After he became president?
well,
While he was running?
he wasn't gonna win. I did it when he was running. Of course he wasn't gonna win, so I thought it was a safe joke. Boy,
Right.
did I learn my lesson.
And now they keep running that episode?
Oh my god, yeah. I mean, the network called, they were like, "Are you absolutely sure you want us to air this?" They gave me the chance to get out of it, A&E did. And I was like, "Nah, good joke's a good joke, go for it." Should have not, but, for me, it was just, whenever it got really bad, I'd get hate mail, but I still would get every day, still to this day, I get a letter from somebody on email saying, "Man, you really helped me here." I got feedback daily, like we're making a difference, even when we thought we weren't. But if we hadn't done the therapy, yeah, I don't think it would have been right.
Mm.
I mean, because there's 2 episodes that we filmed that they never aired because we got in there and we were like, this person's not aware of what they're signing up for. Like, this is unethical. Like, we can't be there. And we had a therapist on set always.
Yeah.
And so that was really nice that there was someone both ethically and morally and academically above me that could say, no, we have to leave. Now, we would communicate together and make that decision, but both times it was a no brainer. We needed to turn the cameras off. But the network still let us stay and clean those houses. So we stayed for 3 days and helped that family. Probably my best 2 episodes were ones that never aired because it was boring for TV. It was very happy and positive. We made a difference. And that's really boring for reality TV.
Yeah.
So my 2 favorite shows never aired.
Do you think a lot of those people have kept their houses the way and followed through with the
Yeah.
help and the year of therapy?
Yeah, the number on that, 60%, if they go to therapy, 60% stay
60%.
clean.
Yeah.
If they don't go to therapy, 0 stay
Wow.
clean.
Right back.
Hoarding is caused by trauma, by something bad has happened to you,
Mhm.
and you're looking for your happiness and self worth in that stuff. And so, no different than drugs or alcohol or whatever. I mean, ironically, this whole virus thing is going to cause an enormous amount of hoarding 10 years from now.
You think so?
Yeah, because you're going to go without. People are going to, I mean, this is the closest thing we'll have to a depression in our lifetime. People lost 20 to 30% of their financial net worth last week. And you're going to see people, especially older people, like, over 75, they don't have the time now that you and I have to make that money back. So they're going to start hoarding money and they're going to start hoarding stuff very quickly.
Yeah.
Specifically, we're seeing it in food, right? I mean, toilet paper, my God.
Oh god.
I mean, that's ridiculous. Like,
Yeah.
no one takes that much dumps, right?
No.
But we're hoarding it.
I've got about 2 days worth left and, I'm kinda worried.
Yeah, I got a
Like
bunch, by the way. Yeah. I mean, the irony is, I was thinking yesterday, I was like, God, how many of my old clients are like, see, I needed that stuff. You made me throw it
oh,
away.
jeez.
I mean, it
Yeah.
is what it is. The hoarding is, we're at a point in time where we put our self worth, our value in the accumulation of stuff. And I am hopeful that the virus will help us put it back to the value of our family and our
Mhm.
relationships because that's really all we got.
Hoard relationships.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to see that in times like this, and so I think people are either going to fall off the cliff or really rise up and be happy. There's always a reason in my hoarding. I've always seen that, and a lot of times it comes back to very specific events like what we're going through right now. About 5 years ago, I realized I really wanted to do a different show about my other clients, which was downsizing. They're not hoarders; they're just
Yeah.
people that they've lived in one place for 60 years.
So apart from the show, when you weren't filming anything, were the majority of your clients, downsizers, or was it
It was half and half,
yeah.
till about 3 years. For 10 years, it was just all hoarding. And then I started getting calls like, "Hey, my mom's not a hoarder, but," and that always meant to us that they were like a really bad hoarder. When someone says like, "Oh, my mom's not a hoarder, but she needs to get some things," like we get like, "How many cats does she have?" And we even changed our communication. We Instead of saying, "How many cats do they have?" we would say, "Does your mom have 300 cats?" And they'd be like, 300? No, she's got 17. And you're like, well, that's not so bad, right? And it was all perspective. And we had to learn to lead with really big numbers
Yeah.
because, like, no, only one person had 300 cats. And one lady one time had 300 cats. It was insane.
Oh my god.
But it made sense to her, right?
Yep.
But when I said, how many cats do you have? They'd be like, five? And they would like say
And
that. It's like asking me how much do I bench press? It's like 200, right? Like, I don't know. I'm just throwing out a number that's you're not going to judge, right? And so I learned to say, "Do you have 300 cats?" And they say, "No, no, no." And then we give me the real number. But I loved it. But when I got to about 50-50, it was like, okay, look, there's a whole nother business here that doesn't involve really aggressive mental illness. They're just getting older and they just need help getting
Yep.
through some stuff. And so we really started to go there just to give our employees a break. I mean, I was up to 80 employees at that point, and
Wow.
I had teams going up and down the East Coast cleaning houses, and they needed a break from the hordes. They needed to be able to go downsizing, and because then you get to hang out with the cool old lady and her husband and go through her stories. So you could do that for 2 weeks and then do
Yeah.
a really bad horde for a week. But when you were just doing the worst horde after the worst horde after the worst horde, that became too much. That became too aggressive
Was it
for
taking
all
a
of our mentality.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
taking a toll
I mean,
on you?
oh yeah. I mean, that's the reason I'm divorced. I mean, it was mentally. I just couldn't. I was not able. I was so wrapped up in every. And my wife and I, ex-wife, we talk about this all the time, so it's okay. I mean, I was so wrapped up in saving the world, I wasn't really able to focus on the four people in front of me.
Oh, yeah.
And I had to go to a lot of. The irony was, by the end of my divorce, like I was having to go to therapy for myself because of what 10 years of hoarding did to me.
Wow.
So I was going weekly to therapy because I had to get a hold of all the trauma that I had soaked in. Because every client was like horrific stories. And so then I personally was trying to get into more positive stories too. And that's when I got back to the downsizing, and I just fell in love with them. I mean, there's
Yeah.
you saw the show on Legacy List. I mean, like Lillian Lambert, the first African American woman to go to Harvard.
Yeah, I just watched that one.
Dude, she's one of the coolest women in the world, man.
Right.
I mean, she's a badass. And
Yeah.
like it just was really I was like, "Oh, I can do this during the week and not have to, go through trauma every week over and over." And I took 6 months off in between.
Between Hoarders and Legacy List?
Yeah, just to kind of like reset
Mhm.
and get to know my kids more. I stayed home with my kids for 6 months and it was great.
Were you still working, doing jobs
No,
that
I
weren't
sold
paid?
my business. I
Oh.
sold everything, and I just paddleboarded up and down the James River every day, pretty much. I'd put the kids on the bus, and then I'd go surfing, and then I'd come back home and relax. And I just kind of like I didn't do anything except hang out with my kids, and it was awesome. And I'm really enjoying. I'm still doing that now. I mean, I'm working again, but I really have enjoyed just doing more public speaking and more classes and more education and more TV and radio.
Do you have a business now that's
I didn't. I just sold it. I had a really big business. I'm kind of pulling back at 44. It's like, okay, I don't have to work 80 hours a week. And my kids are the same age yours are. I mean, they're,
mhm.
6, 8, and 10. So I mean, my job, right? My full-time job is dad. And then the TV and speeches are kind of part-time.
Is Legacy List being produced by you or your are a company that you're involved
We've
with
got a
or
team. Yeah. So MYE, it's a production company out of New York. We,
okay.
we partner together. And I'm a big, I guess they say co-executive producer.
Oh, nice.
I won't get to go to the Emmys if we get nominated. I mean, but I'm the host of the show, but I get to help write it. And I get to help script. So it's
That's
nice,
awesome,
and
yeah.
it's great because with Hoarders, I never knew what was going to air. I mean, we would film 100 hours of tape. I didn't know what was going to make the TV show until you saw it. I
Mm,
mean, we both would watch it on Monday night. That was back, at a time when what night the show aired mattered.
yeah, right.
Now it doesn't matter when it's on. It's just you got to get people to tape it, to DVR it. And I also went against the grain. I said, look, I want a show that's going to show older Americans telling stories, and we're not going to talk about how much it's worth. We're going to talk financially. We're going to talk about the emotional value.
Yeah.
And everybody was like, nope, 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 not interested. I mean,
Did you film it and then, shop it around?
we did. We shopped it, and very few networks wanted it because they just didn't believe people wanted positive. They were like, the comments would be like, "Well, is there like an attractive granddaughter that could like fight over
Oh,
the
jeez.
stuff?" And I'd be like, "Nah, I'm sure there is, but we're not interested in that."
Yeah, yeah,
So that's why we moved to PBS, Virginia Public Media here in Richmond, and they were just like, "Yeah, we get it. They totally got it." And they were like, "Let's give it one episode. Let's see what happens." And so they helped us do one episode. We did one full episode, and they were like, we love it. It's magic. And the
yeah,
response, when they started going out to their donors, the response was like, "Oh my gosh, this is like my mom's house. This is like my." And so they would start to
yeah,
reminisce about their family. And I was like, "That's what we want. We want people to talk. We want people to go back into
yeah.
their houses and go through their pictures." And
And then the other nice thing about it, I gotta say, is, you do these little vignettes of
history vignettes.
yes, I love it. I mean,
So,
I'm kind of like a nerd like that, a little bit, and it's not like boring type stuff. It's just like really quick, 3 minute,
so
like,
my
history.
favorite one is you find out that Albert Einstein actually designed the refrigerator,
Yeah,
right? Like who the modern refrigerator was
right,
designed by,
right.
and it's like what? And so it's kind of useless history pods is what we like to say with it.
Sure, it's like
Um,
trivia stuff.
yeah, one of the board members at VPM came up with that. I didn't like it when they presented it. I was like, I don't know. And he's like, dude, you're coming from cable television where you have 42 minutes of television. On public television, you have 58 minutes. He's like, you're going to need to break it up. He's like, trust me,
Right.
try it out. I'm like, all right, well, whatever. And I wanted nothing to do with it. I like kind of fought it. And then when they showed me the first one, I was like, oh my God, I love it. And
Yeah.
now it's like my kids' favorite part. They are okay with Daddy's part of the show, but they really, really, really love the history pods, and so we love them. I mean, I'm super excited about them. And so if
Yeah.
you haven't seen the show, go to mylegacylist.com, and you can. There's a couple, or just go to pbs.org now. You can watch all
Yeah.
6 episodes on pbs.org.
So there's 6 episodes now. Are there any more in the pipe?
Looks like we're gonna have 10 more in season
Oh,
2.
nice.
Obviously, we're not sure yet. I mean, the last 2 weeks has changed everything. This is a show about going into aging Americans' homes. We
Mhm.
have to be careful with that now.
Right.
But downsizing takes on so many forms, and we're seeing a lot of people now that just clean out their house so they can fix it up and adapt it for medical issues. Or we're seeing a lot of families now bring roommates in.
Yeah.
Like my mom will bring in her two best friends, and they live in the house together. So we're going to feature more of that this season and less of the moving into a senior living community.
The episodes that I've seen, you don't really talk about where those things are going. Are they getting
Yeah,
rid of a lot of that stuff, or
they
are they
get rid
just
of about
moving it?
90% of it.
Oh
Yeah,
my
so they're moving
gosh.
from like a 6,000 square foot home to a 1,100 square foot home.
Yeah.
And so one of the feedback we've seen after season one was all the people. I've been able to do a couple speeches before the virus hit. People would come up and they're like, "I love your show, but I wish you'd show the struggle more." So they want to see, the viewers really want to see how hard it is to let go of the stuff, and they want to see what they did with the stuff. Did they sell it, did they donate it, or is it staying in their house? So we're going to show more of that next season. I mean, we had a lady the other day that grandfather clocks are a nightmare in my industry. They're never valuable. They're always perceived to be a lot. My grandfather,
Yeah.
hand carved this on the Mayflower. And you're like, it's from Haverty's. Like no, but like there's always these perceived value, both financially and emotionally, of things like that. We had one lady that we even during the show, our clock expert came in and he was like, "Nope, it's not." And, he's like, "It's really not that valuable. It's like a grand or two." So we just didn't even feature it on the show, and we sent it to auction. It literally did not, because we'd already featured a grandfather clock earlier in the season, and so we didn't even feature it on the show. And then it goes to auction and sells for $35,000.
Oh my gosh.
And it was like, man, like that's the one we needed to come back and say, okay, hey, here's what it sold for, and here's the person that bought it, and why did we want to feature the person that bought it. And so we're still tweaking the show, which is exciting, and
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll be delayed a bit, but
I know you're not really focusing too much on the value of some of these items, but,
yeah.
like, what are some of the most valuable things you found other than that clock?
That Stingray. Did you see the Corvette?
The Corvette?
That's
No, I have
episode
not seen
5.
that one.
Okay, oh, that's probably the one of the cooler episodes. There was the next one, episode 5, is a family. This guy was a beer collector, and
That might have been the one that was on when my parents were in town. Was that
okay,
upstate New York?
yeah, upstate Philly, yeah,
Oh, it was
and
Philly,
upstate
okay.
PA, and it was this guy was an avid beer collector. He had a lot of bottles that were pre-prohibition bottles, so 100-year-old bottles with like paper labels, which is fascinating. But
Yeah.
we found a Stingray '67 Stingray Corvette in his backyard worth about 80 grand. The beer bottle collection went for over a half million,
Oh my god.
believe it or not.
Oh my god.
Um, I found a bunch of letters from Thomas Edison to one lady's great grandfather. That was
I
fascinating.
saw that. That's one I watched,
Oh,
recently.
that was amazing. The stuff we found in that house. That family had a lot of financial means, and so what we found, one of the things is the wealthier the family, the more careful we had to be to show things, because we there were some items in that house that were worth hundreds of thousands of dollars,
Mhm.
and we didn't want that to be known.
Some of those things, though, from that family in particular, because
Yeah.
that was New Jersey, right? And they lived in
New
like a
Jersey, yeah.
like
Oh,
what
they live
looks
next
like
door to Thomas. They literally live next door to
yeah.
Thomas Edison. Yeah.
So those things that were worth that much money, did they sell off, or did the
They didn't
family
sell it. They didn't sell anything. They gave them to different family members.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, we found a sketch, a sketch worth 20 grand. And
yeah.
she's like, I'm totally going to sell it. And then when it came time to sell it, she's like, nah, I'm going to hang it up. I like it. You know, I mean, I tend to do more shows with people. I'll put it this way: when I was a young kid and new to dating, my mom said, "You got to date someone that listens to the same music you do." And she goes, "Life will just be easier because it means you're from the same area. It means you're from the same point in time." She goes, "If you like the same music, you'll get along." And it was pretty sage advice from my mom, actually. Later in life, it's like,
Mhm.
"Oh yeah, I totally should have listened to that." Like she was right. But with our clients, I tend to connect more with families that have had to struggle a little bit. Not that there's struggle in every family. Like this family had a member that signed the Declaration of Independence.
Wow.
and we didn't even get to feature that because we didn't have enough time to get to it.
Oh gosh.
And so like I love when there's just a
Yeah.
few items in the house, not too many, because then I get to hit the real core of the stories. But like you, some people just want to know the financial value of more stuff.
No, I
But
don't. I mean, I'm
I
not.
really push. This is what and I've had to fight everybody in the world, including the network. I'm like, guys, there's already a really good show. It's called Antiques Roadshow.
Yeah.
Like, we're not going to beat that. Like, we at best we'd be second, right? And we don't want to be second. We want to be the best in the world. So we're going to go with emotion
You also don't want to disappoint people who have like these family heirlooms that aren't worth anything in their house. Focus on what it means to
to
them.
them. I say,
Yeah.
like my favorite item I found was I love this key, this locker key.
The railroad guy.
The railroad. The guy worked
Yeah.
on the whatever DNA, B&O
L&N.
Railroad, whatever. L&N Railroad. Thank you. You did watch it. Thank you for
Yeah,
watching the
I
show.
did.
You're the guy that watched that episode. Yeah. And it was the Nashville, the Louisville to Nashville, the L&N ride. And we
Yeah.
found his locker key, right? Her great grandfather's locker key when he worked on the
That's
on the
awesome.
railroad. And we were able to find out the reason he had a locker was to put his gun in it because they kept getting robbed. That line kept getting robbed. And we told the story, and then that same lady, it was amazing. She had some fascinating stuff. Her father was an engineer during the war. He was in New Guinea, and he was an engineer. So that meant, and she kind of skimmed over this, but when we did our research, it meant he would go and scout the places we were going to land to fight. So he was literally like a spy.
Mm.
He and one other guy would go to the beaches and they would sneak in and figure out where the boats should land, and they would come back and logistically say, we got to do this, this, and this,
Wow,
and
that's
able
a
to win the war.
dangerous job.
Dangerous job, man. Fascinating. And he found this canoe prow, this old antique canoe prow, like the
Yeah.
front of this really beautiful canoe. So in the time where he's trying not to get killed, he's trying to find out how we're going to like actually fight this war and win and save amount of lives. He picks up this piece of wood and he's like, wow, that's gorgeous. And he was able to pause and find beauty in something, right?
Yeah.
And that just blew my mind. So I was like, okay, tell me about your dad. Like, I want to know more about your dad. And she started, and so that was like kind of when the show came together. We actually filmed that show as the pilot. It ended up airing as the second episode,
Mhm.
but it was the first one we shared. And so it filmed. And so for us, it was like, oh, it's not, because that thing financially was worth, $100.
Yeah.
But emotionally, it was worth. And so she started telling stories about her grandfather. And then this is what I love about this show. I just found the other day, I got an email from a lady. She's like, hey, I'm watching your show. And that picture of the lady's father that was on the beach in New Guinea where he found the prow, she goes, my dad is the guy standing next to him.
Get out.
And he was like 20 years old, right? And she's like, she's 80 something now. She's like, I need that picture. Can you connect me with the family? Our dads were in the service together.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, oh my God, this is why I love doing this show, man. Like, I mean, these two families are able to connect. And I just
Right.
connected them yesterday, in fact, on email. And it was just so exciting.
When you stop focusing on the canoe prow and you
Yeah.
dig deeper into the
Yeah,
story,
it's two
I mean,
people.
that's where the
Yeah.
connections are made, man. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So let's take that to a bigger ride, which is like, I've been an entrepreneur for 20 years. And every time I focused on money, I failed.
Mm.
When I focused on helping other people, when I got rid of the prow and focused on the people in the picture, that's when my business has succeeded.
Oh, I love it.
And I'm telling you, this is cheesy, but man, if you, especially now more than ever, if you focus on helping people, life will work out. If you just focus on trying to get rich, it's never going to work out. I got 20 years to prove that it will not work out when you try to make money. If you just focus on the good, it does work out.
And you feel a lot better too, don't you?
Oh, dude, I'm good. Life's good, man. Like, life's really good. I mean, I got 3 healthy kids. Like, I could stop there. That means life is good.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to be annoyed with them in about 2 weeks, but at least we're all around to be annoyed.
We're
right?
all in the same boat.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
go for a walk, man. Get outside.
Well, I guess we can end it there.
Yeah.
I think this was this was great talking to you.
Dude, I appreciate that, and I love what you're doing, man. You're doing a positive show, man. I love it.
Thank you so much. I wish we could have done this in person. Next time.
Yeah, I know. Next time.
Whenever
in a
we're
year.
in a year, whatever,
In a
we'll
year.
go get a beer or something.
I'd love it, man. I'll take you paddleboarding down. I go right up the Huguenot Bridge.
All right, cool.
That's where I go, man. I
I'm
love
down.
it. All right. Well, dude, I appreciate you. I gotta go grab our kids now, get them lunch.
All right. Thanks a lot for doing this. Okay, that's the chat. What a great guy. Really enjoyed talking with him. I think he and I share a respect and a fondness for family history, for those stories that bind us, and how those important artifacts of life, like a key or a drawing, an old bottle, handwritten notes, a book that's been passed down, how those things bring something tangible to those stories. I think he's got a great perspective on the crisis we're all facing right now, and I agree with him. We have got to use this time as an opportunity to grow closer with our loved ones and really bond. I think we'll end up being better for it in the long run. I'm going to go try to do that now, get out of this closet, maybe kick the ball around with the kids in the backyard, maybe teach them how to cook something, maybe make some stupid TikTok videos with them. I don't know. Hey, the Caught by Happy podcast is powered by Ring Media, and Ring Media is open for business right now. For all you creators or potential creators out there who are finding yourself with a lot of time on your hands to maybe start a podcast or a YouTube series, Ring Media can help with editing or production services. Fully remote, of course. So check out ringmedia.com. That's RRING media.com. You can also join the Ring Media Network, and let's make good stuff together. Okay, everybody, stay safe out there. Stay home. Do what you can to help those in need. Maybe write some handwritten notes. Go through your attic. See what's up there. Find something your grandmother wrote and put it in a special place. Binge watch Hoarders, and definitely check out the last 6 episodes of Legacy List on pbs.org. All right, everybody. Bye-bye.